Hi folks, welcome back to CoderX Ankit and welcome back to this Spring Security 6.x with Spring Boot 3.x course. And in this video, we are going to learn about the architecture of Spring Security. We will see how Spring Security works, and with the time being in the course, we will go gradually in depth of some concepts. Okay, so we are going to see a picture that how Spring Security works and what are the internal architectures that it secures your applications. Fine. So see, this was our application that we developed. Okay, one Spring Boot application, and we were just writing one controller over here, and you can see this is returning welcome dear user, and I explained all of the things about this and how this is securing our app, and how the password is getting generated, and how to pass the header, okay, authorization, that basic, okay, the base 64 encode value. Okay, so these things I already told you, right? Now in this video we are going to learn the architecture. Fine, so let's see how. Fine, architecture of, okay, we will write architecture of, see here, architecture of Spring Security. The core feature of a Spring Security lies in the Spring Security filters. Okay, so Spring Security is all about filters. That's it. What do you mean by filter? What is the work of any filter? Filter just refines your things, or filter your things. Whatever you give, suppose you want to filter water. Fine. So you have a filter and you put the water, then your water gets filtered, right? So that's the thing. So when you just see Spring Security docs, let's go to docs. Fine, and you just see here what it is saying. Go to docs and say here architecture. Where see architecture. There is a good architecture over here. You can see this is the client. Okay, some request, then it works with some filter chain. Fine, here something is there. Now what is this? I'll explain here. So see, suppose you created one application having Spring Security implemented there. Fine. So now when you are doing any Spring based project, any web or Spring MVC, right? Any Spring MVC or any Spring web based project. Now web based projects works or executes in a servlet container. You already know that, right? There is servlet container, or you can say, suppose this is your servlet container. Now see here what I'm going to explain here. Okay, this is your servlet container. Fine, little more below. Okay, this is your servlet container. This is main important thing here. Now if this is your servlet container, now suppose when the request first comes, fine, when the request comes, request means what? HTTP request. Fine, so request comes. So now what happens after that? So request goes into servlet container, right na boss? HTTP request are trapped by servlet container first, na, right? So servlet container is there right now. Just understand these things. Now what happens? It do not process your things just after this. Okay, just after trapping your request, it has some filters. Means it will filter your what, boss? It filters what, boss? So it filters, see here, first request got trapped by the servlet container, then you have some servlet filters. These filters are managed by servlets, which check some things. Okay, fine, which validates your request. Fine, and suppose you have these three filters. Okay, and this is what? This is servlet filters. Okay, fine, this is servlet filter. Let's say character encoding filter. Fine. Character form content form content filter. Fine. Form content filter. And more here, one more, let's say request caching filter. Now see, these filters are from servlet container, from servlet, right? Because in Java, you know, servlet handles the request and response. Now how to create servlet? What do you mean by servlet? You have to learn Java EE, Enterprise Edition, right? So servlet, here just understand this, कि request is coming, fine, request is coming in your application execution environment, and it got trapped by the servlet container. Now request does not just your request will not just call this controller automatically here. Lots of things goes before that, before calling this controller method, right? So inside the servlet container, your request got trapped, and then your request just got here. Okay, the request just goes into the filter of your servlet. Now after filter, it goes into this filter again. There is chain of filters, you can say. There is filter. Okay, now some request will go here. Okay, your request one after one. So these filters will filter the request, or you can say validates the request according to their work. Fine, according to their work. Okay, now suppose this is one filter. Okay, so character encoding filter is doing some work, form content filter is doing some work, request caching filter is doing some work. Now after this, what happened? If your application is Spring Boot based application, now just see here, if we are running this application, you see, let me run it, run on the, okay, one second, go here, go to main application, right click, run on Spring Boot. Okay, let me run it, and you see what is happening here. See, this generated a password here, using Spring Security. This is the password. Okay, so copy this. I am having one default user, right? So I have to go to encode base 64, something like this. I have to write, open this, I will write user, okay, then colon, then paste this password, and then encode the values, or I will be having the encoded form of this user and password value, that is base 64 encoded value. I will go to the postman and see I'm hitting this request, okay, /welcome, and here with the authorization header I will pass basic space, and then I will paste this encoded value and then send it. Now it's working, right? See, 200, okay, welcome dear user, it is coming. So if I don't pass the authorization header, it will not hit the endpoint, right? See, 401 unauthorized. Fine, we already seen that. Now how this username and password is getting authenticated? So Spring Security, fine, Spring Security is doing its job. So Spring Security takes your request. Fine, Spring Security is taking your request. Suppose you are hitting that request, na boss. You are hitting that request, http://localhost:8080/welcome. You are hitting this request. Now Spring Security, I'm talking about Spring Security, not I'm talking about the servlet right now. Okay, so just for the moment, just leave this servlet as it is. Okay, here, fine. Whatever I explained about this servlet thing, servlet security, just leave this here right now for the moment. So now what is happening here, when your request is coming, okay, now servlet container is trapping, fine, so just leave this for a moment. Now how this is working, how this is validating that, okay, when I am just giving the correct values, only then it is working. Why not with the wrong values it is working? Okay, why if I just write anything which creates the wrong value of this authorization header form. Now when I just hit send, see 401 unauthorized, how it's working, how it's checking, how it's validating that. So based upon some, see now it's coming fine if I just corrected the value. So Spring Security is doing its job. Now Spring Security have some components over there, fine, which is just checking that okay our our user yaar, our user is having correct username or password values, that too converted in the form of base 64, and that too is being passed by the authorization header. If everything is correct, then what, then uh, then authentication, like successful authentication will be done, right? So Spring Security has some components, right, for doing its authentication and authorization, right? So Spring Security is having what, boss? There is some auth filter, you can say authentication filter, fine, authentication filter. Okay, authentication filter, it has username and password authentication filter. Okay, basic authentication filter, too many filters. Spring Security core concepts lies in the filter, only filters, filter, right? So it has, Spring Security is giving you many filters, yes sir. And if there are many filters, then the job of every or each filter is different. So each and every filter is doing its own job, fine, according to the request, what your request contains. Suppose you want to filter sand, you need different type of filter. You want to filter water, you need different type of filter. If you want to filter milk, you need different type of filter, right? If you want to filter petrol, you need different type of filter. So based on the request here, based on the request, right, what your request contains, what this which like what your getting my point now, what your request contains, what headers it contains, what details it contains, what data it contains. Based upon that, Spring Security, okay, Spring Security has some filters, and based upon that, that filter get invoked and your request got filter, and if everything is fine, it is validated well, and then further then your controller gets invoked. So but how internally? So Spring Security has some components, fine. What components? Authentication filter, username and password filter. Okay, it has too much of things. Okay, it has bunch of filters, username and password filter. Okay, now I will talk about the some filters in details after this video. Like in this course we will talk about some filters, but not all filters, because talking about all the filters of Spring Security is beyond of any course or right any syllabus. So we just need to understand that okay, some filters are there which are doing their job to filter our request and to check our request. Okay, these things is there or not, right? That's how it our request or user gets authenticated, fine. So here authentication filter is there, username and password filter is there, then you have for authorization, there is authorization filter is there. So these and some more, some here some more filter. Okay, more filter is there, here you have some another filter is there. So there are n number of filters in Spring Security, fine sir. There are there are n numbers of filters in Spring Security. Now let me give you an analogy. Suppose you want to go or you want to travel via airplane, fine. So when you are just getting a flight, what happened when you go at the airport? Okay, now you have security checkpoints. First of all, you will be scanned, then your bags will be scanned, then your like you have to open the belt and keep it in different basket, and then those things will be scanned, and then you will be having one boarding pass that will be validated, right? And after then you will be allowed to sit at the at your flight booking seat, right? So can I say that there are n number of security checkpoints before you sit in your flight or in your airplane seat, right? So here can I say that before you sit, okay, on your reserved seat in the flight, you have to go through a chain of security. Can I say that? Yes or no, boss? Comment below. Can I say that before you sit at your reserved seat in the flight, you have to go through a chain of security where at different checkpoints you are getting checked, okay, for X, Y, Z reasons. Like at some checkpoint you will be scanned, your whole body will be scanned, then your bags will be scanned, then your some another objects will be scanned, then your boarding pass will be validated. So you have to go through a security chain and then you are allowed to sit. That's it. Same way here, if you are hitting the request and our only main goal is to, if the request is correct, if the request is having all the details, if the customer is having all the request, if the what passengers are having all the correct details, all the reserved correct details, and everything is verified, then he or she will be able to sit in his flight booked seats, right? Like here. Fine. So here in the similar way or the same way, you can say that our goal is to check that, okay, if our request is correct, if our request is validated, okay, then this method should be called. Our goal is this here only. Then before calling this method, your request must go through a chain of security, right, boss? And these filters are different checkpoints. Are you getting my point or not? This filter 1, filter 2, filter 3, filter 4, filter 5, these are different checkpoints. Can I say that all together this is a what? This is a security chain. Can I say that? When you go inside the chain, you yourself need to be checked by all of these filters or all of these checkpoints, okay? So at each checkpoints there are different jobs, like different way of checking. Fine. So here can I say that this all together, can I say that this is a security chain? Yes, no, boss? Can I say that this is a security chain? Okay. Now chain of what? Filter. So I can say that security chain filter, or you can say security filter chain. That's a correct word. Security filter chain. So this is a security filter chain, right, na sir? This is a security filter chain. So before hitting this method, before hitting the controller, your request must go through this security filter chain. Now who is doing that? Your Spring security, right? So these Spring security filter chain details, these classes, these components are given by the Spring security or the Spring Boot security, if you are working with the Spring Boot starter security, right? So Spring security is giving all this filter, right? Giving all these filters. But my question is, here you will know, but my question is, now see, the request is being trapped by the servlet container, but your security things or your security implementations are kept where? Are kept kept at Spring Boot security, or you can say Spring security. It means request is here na inside the servlet container, boss. Are you agreeing with me or not here? Request is there. Fine. Where? In the servlet container. Now when you are having a Spring application, you will have the IOC container as well. And these security filter, chain and authentication filter, the authorization filter, username and password, chorus filter, these components are being managed by the Spring framework or not. And that too, you can say that these things are getting managed by the Spring IOC container or not. Yes, sir. Now your request is in servlet container context. Then how your request gets to the security things? Because you see, this authentication filter cannot be managed by servlet container. This authorization filter cannot be managed by servlet container, because this security filter chain is given by nothing but Spring security. Yes or no, boss? Given by? Arey yaar, given by Spring security. Right na, sir? So now how your request will have all these things? How your request will be validated through this security filter chain, or pass through this security filter chain, because these are not being managed by the servlet container or your servlet, you can say, right? So if I am creating one request, it means I need one servlet. So some servlet is there which are required, okay, which is required to manage my request and response. Fine. So but see, the servlet works in the servlet container, and the Spring managed object, Spring managed means works in the application context IOC container. Right now, now how this servlet, your servlet, right, the servlet that is managing this request, or you can say managing this request and response, that servlet is going to take the help of this security filter chain. Arey boss, what I'm saying, suppose one servlet is there. Fine, sir, one servlet is there. Okay, say one servlet is there to, okay, one servlet is there to manage your HTTP request and response. Fine, sir. And here Spring security configures some filters. Okay, some filters. Fine, some filters, and these are Spring managed objects. Now the question is how servlet, okay, how servlet can take the help of Spring security, or you can say Spring security by having by using, right now, help by using the services of, okay, different filters, different. Okay, this is the question, this is the main question, boss, this is the main question here. Different filters. Okay, filters. Okay, filters, because, okay, filters, as these filters, okay, you can say Spring security filter chain, the are being managed by Spring IOC container, right now, boss, IOC container. So okay, so here servlet are being managed by servlet life cycle, right now boss? Servlet life cycle are being managed by servlet container, and spring bean life cycle, okay, life cycle is, oh, just ignore the grammar things, okay. Fine. Spring bean life cycle is being managed by IOC container. Fine. So here, so spring bean here cannot become dependent object of servlet container directly. Array, if you want to use some services, if A class wants to use some services of class B, then class B must be dependent object for the A, na boss? A becomes the target, B becomes the dependent. You know the dependency injection, right? So here your servlets needs to use the services of your security filters, right? These filters. Now this is being managed by the IOC container, and this is being managed by the servlet container. Now both are the different context. Now this is servlet container, this is being managed by IOC container. Now conflicts come. How your servlet can use this, right? Because what? In dependency injection, what happened, boss? Suppose I have a spring bean A. Okay, this is a target. Then I have a spring bean B. Then it is dependent, na boss? Then we can easily do the dependency injection, because they are both being managed by the IOC container. But here, your servlet gets managed by the servlet container, right? See here, one request is there. So to handle your request, one servlet is needed. Fine. To handle your request, one servlet is needed. Just know here first, right? So one servlet must be there, and that too is managed by the servlet container. Now servlet, your XYZ servlet, let's say your XYZ servlet cannot have these filters or this security filter chain as dependent object, and their dependency injection is not possible, because one component is coming from the servlet life cycle, from the servlet container, and second one is the dependent one is coming from the IOC container. So there is dependency injection not possible directly, boss. Now how these things will be taken care? See here. Now your servlet container is having one more filter. Your servlet container is having one most important filter, and that is nothing but, see here, I will create the diagram here. Your servlet container will be having one more very important thing here, very important component here. That is delegating filter proxy. That is what, boss? Delegating filter proxy. Fine, boss. Now your request gets traveled from this some servlet filters itself. Now here it will be trapped by the delegating filter proxy. Now what this delegating filter proxy does? So delegating filter proxy delegates your request to some filters, to these filters, by taking the help of a component called FilterChainProxy. By taking the help of a component called FilterChainProxy. Yes, boss. The FilterChainProxy comes into the picture, right? FilterChainProxy comes into the picture. Why it came, boss? Because your servlet container don't know a thing about filter given by the Spring security, na boss? So FilterChainProxy. Are you getting my point or not there? So this delegating filter proxy, fine, this delegating filter proxy is doing what, boss? Is delegating the request, okay, request further for the Spring security filters by using one component called FilterChainProxy. Fine, boss. Are you getting my point or not there? So now, based upon this filter chain proxy, this security filter chain will be activated. Fine. So suppose one request is coming. Fine. Now first of all, it gets trapped by the servlet container. Now your servlet container, there are n filters over here, some filters, some default filters of servlet. Okay. Now there is one more filter, that is delegating filter proxy. Now delegating filter proxy delegates the request so that the security filters can be implemented. Fine. Now this delegating filter proxy takes the help of filter chain proxy. Now filter chain proxy understands that, okay, which filter chain do I need to execute? This filter chain knows based upon the request. Fine. So delegating filter proxy is not having any logic of filtering things or any filtering your request, but this filter chain proxy has that logic, okay, which can send your request to the required filter chain. Fine, sir. To the required filter chain. Are you getting my point or not, boss? Okay, this filter chain is there. So I'm hitting this request. So based upon the data, based upon the request, okay, this filter chain proxy decides which security filters should I here execute. Fine. Are suppose you are a VIP passenger. Fine, you are VIP passenger. So now your way of checking security will be done by some bunch of different groups of people or some different team at the airport. I am normal passenger, okay, traveling in economy. Fine. So my security checks will be done by some different team or some different groups of security people, right? One is first class or business class. Fine. So based upon my request, based upon my data, based upon my things, okay, airport will decide, or airport control things will be decide that, okay, which security person will check or which types of security will be performed. Okay, so here also, based upon our request boss, okay, based upon our request, the filter chain proxy will decide which security filter chain should be executed, because there can be not only, okay, one security filter chain, there can be many, there can be n number of security filter chain. Fine. It depends on our configuration, how we configures. Okay, it depends on the airport that how many security options these airports have constructed or having there, right? That's the whole bunch of thing here. So we are having here, see, one security filter chain is there, one another security filter chain is there. Okay, so it can have n number of security filter chain. Fine, let me write here 0 security filter chain some, okay, this is, or let's say 1. Okay, this is security filter chain 1, this is security filter chain 2. Fine, it can be more depending upon the configuration. Fine. So there may be multiple security filter chain. Now who will decide which filter chain will decide which security filter chain should be executed for this particular request? Okay, so this filter chain proxy will decide, hey, I want let's say this security filter chain 2 should be executed for this. So based upon that, now your request will be filtered by all of the things here. Fine, all of the filters here. Now after this security filter chain execution, if everything is fine according to this security filter chain, then your request will again, okay, then your request will be again given back to the filter chain proxy. Okay boss, given back to the filter chain proxy. Your request will be again given back to the filter chain proxy. It means filter chain proxy is the manager, okay, who is managing your request for the security things. Fine sir, who this filter chain proxy is deciding that where to go now, okay, for the security things. Fine na boss. So that's the whole thing here. Okay, and let me just because one more diagram here it will be added, that's why boss. Fine, see here. Okay, so here your request goes back again to the filter chain proxy, and then there is dispatcher servlet. You already know there is dispatcher servlet, which dispatches your what boss. There is dispatcher servlet dispatches your request, yes na, to do further things here. So after this here your request comes. Fine, after from coming from the filter chain proxy. Fine boss. Now here dispatcher servlet, there configuration is there na, for what boss. Here yaar, here dispatcher servlet, at dispatcher servlet you are hitting get, right, you are hitting get method. Fine, get for what boss, get for let's say welcome, right, get for welcome, you are hitting this point, get for welcome. Fine this. Okay, now if you are hitting get slash welcome, get method and slash welcome URL, this one I'm talking about, then which method it should run, right? Then dispatcher servlet, it is having handler mappings, right? So dispatcher servlet will do its job, and based upon that it will return what boss, controller things. It will just run, it will just hit this, right now boss, this controller method things. Okay, so slash welcome is there, dispatcher servlet mappings will be done. Fine, handlers mapping will be done. Let's suppose here handler mappings. Okay, so handler mappings will be done. Now if handler mapping will be done, so this is giving what, handler mapping will be giving what, so controller का कौन सा method, like which method of the controller class. So controller class having which method boss, this method, let's say welcome method, right, welcome method. Okay, so now it will be again your request goes back after here to the dispatcher servlet, right, dispatcher servlet, I'm just explaining this. And then what boss, it will access your dispatcher servlet, will access the controller method or not. Dispatcher servlet will access the controller method. Okay, that is nothing but welcome here. Fine, welcome here. That's it boss, that's it. And then controller, based on this, if your controller method is using some repository, or if your controller method is having some services method called or invoked inside this, all things will be taken care, all things will be executed. Fine na boss. Then it will go back to the dispatcher servlet, right, then it will go back to the filter chain proxy. Then by passing all these things, okay, by passing all these things, your response will come. Yes or no boss, yes or no. fine na, access the these things, and after then if everything is fine, everything runs, then whatever response comes or whatever output is coming, again it will pass through all the things or not, boss. Your request will pass through all the things. Your request will pass through all the things here, and here after this the modified response will come, modified or improvised, है ना boss, modified or improvised response will come, fine, modified or improvised response will come, okay, here, because it again getting passed with this form security, this all the filters, right? Then this is happening here, boss, this is happening, that's the main important point, fine na boss. So this is your servlet container, okay, and here these things, these security filter chain components are being managed by the Spring IOC container, and you already know, okay, this is embedded servlet container, right na boss, embedded servlet container, right? Now what do you mean by embedded servlet container? You already know that when you are working with Spring based MVC application or Spring based web application, then it will create one IOC container that is servlet web server application context, okay, servlet web server application context. This is nothing but IOC container, boss. This is nothing but IOC container. This is nothing but array yaar, wait, this is nothing but IOC container, fine boss, this is nothing but IOC container. So can I say that this all comes under, fine, this all diagram will fall under, okay boss, this all diagram will fall under servlet web server application context, IOC container. Inside this there is embedded servlet container, then this IOC container managed filter beans, right? Okay, so that's the thing here. Now just see here very carefully, your authorization, fine boss, your authorization, okay, see here, your authorization and your authentication is being done by the Spring security filter things. So it means you will be working with filters in Spring security by default or with your custom configurations. It means you only need to change or alter the things that is related to filter in Spring security. Because suppose username is by default, username and password filter is doing X job or X work, you want X plus 1 work, some another work, then you can configure this filter username and password filter, fine, you can configure this username and password filter according to your choice, fine, that's the whole thing. Suppose you are going to buy filter from the market, so you have that, suppose you bought one, now after this you can place one tissue paper over there, you can place the tissue paper below there, right? So you can just keep two filters together, you can keep one cloth around the filter, right? And then you can do all the things according to your choice. So that's the whole thing. It means when I talk about configuring things in Spring security, it simply means we are going to work with Spring security filters based upon our requirements, because you do not need to do and filter the things over here for the servlet container. Here servlet container is doing its job. Now you are learning Spring security. It means Spring security is now responsible for securing your applications. Now how these filters are working, why these filters are working, okay, fine. So by calling which method, which one filter will be invoked, and what to change there. So these things we have to take care as a programmer. So we only need to take care about the configuring these filters only. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing there. Fine, boss. I hope you are getting my point now. Fine, na, boss. I hope you are getting my point. Okay. Now suppose there is security filter chain here, and one more thing here. Let me note it, that here you have n security filter chains. There can be n number of security filter chain. Fine, boss. Now which security filter chain at first executed, or how many executed, this can be decided by the filter chain proxy. Now which one first executed. Okay, suppose I have 100 security filter chains. Now which one by one there may be particular order, right? So this security filter chain have some order. Okay, there is some order. Fine, let's say order. So there will be some order value. Fine, order, let's say 1000. Okay, 1000, something like this. And then suppose this is having order 1001, something like this. So there may be some order value, so that filter chain proxy can decide at first which security filter chain should invoked. Okay, so based upon this order of the security filter chain proxy will pick up one filter chain and execute this. Got it or not there? Fine, I hope you are getting these points now. This is pretty easy. Okay, this is pretty easy. Fine, boss. Are working here, and whatever we studied, let's see. So flow of request handling in Spring Security. Okay, how the request is being handled when you are having the Spring Security in your Spring based project. The first, you just see first request received by the servlet container. So if the request is received by the servlet container, when any HTTP request is coming, or HTTP request comes into the application, first it reaches the servlet container. And what is the servlet container? Example are Tomcat, Apache, okay, Tomcat, Glassfish, Jetty, and etc. Right? This is your servlet container. And one more thing happens here. The servlet container has its own filter chain, which includes delegating filter proxy. Okay, this delegating filter proxy is very important here, boss. Fine. Okay, here I already showed you this is again the chain, this character, this thing. Okay, this dispatcher servlet, this is again as together, all this can be said as one servlet container filter chain. This is can also be said like this. Now this filter chain contains delegating filter proxy. Now this delegating filter proxy, if you just go here and say delegating filter proxy, just see here, delegating filter proxy, search, go to class delegating filter proxy, and see it is coming from a Spring framework. See org.springframework.web filter delegating filter proxy, a proxy for a standard servlet filter delegating to a Spring managed bin that implements the filter interface. Okay, so it will delegates there, right? So if you just say here delegating filter proxy, so this delegating filter proxy, it is getting configured automatically by the Spring Boot. Okay, so automatically registered by the Spring Boot in Spring Security. So when you are using Spring Security and you working with a Spring Boot application, it will be automatically registered. Otherwise you have to give the configuration details of this delegating filter proxy in a web.xml file if you are working with XML file. But in case of a Spring Boot, you don't need to configure your delegating filter proxy. It will be automatically configured or registered, you can say. Okay, now the second step, what happens, the most important step, the request goes into the request delegating filter proxy है ना, delegating filter proxy receives the request, receives the or intercepts the, you can say the better word, intercepts the request. Now here what happened, just see delegating filter proxy is acting as a bridge between application context, or you can say between better by servlet container and IOC container, that is application context, right? Okay, bridging the servlet containers filter chain and IOC container filter chain. That's it. IOC container and filter chain. See here. So every time any request comes, every time a request come, or every time request comes, regardless of the URL of the request, right, of the request coming, right, it delegates, or you can say not delegates, you can say it intercepts. It can intercept any request. First of all, it intercepts the request. First of all, this happens. Then at third point, delegating filter proxy does not handle the security things itself. Fine, boss. So it delegates the request to a Spring managed filter bean, that is nothing but which is FilterChainProxy. In case of Spring Security, when you are working with the Spring Security, what is the work of your delegating filter proxy? The only work of your delegating filter proxy is to delegate the request to the FilterChainProxy, so that FilterChainProxy can decide what to do further, or which filter to implement or to use. Okay, fine. Now here okay, once from here, now the third step came, right now, boss. Let's say the third step comes here now. the three, or you can say the third step is what? So now delegation to filter chain proxy. What happens here? So when your request got delegated to the filter check proxy, okay, filter chain proxy, once the delegating filter proxy delegates or forward the request to the filter chain proxy, now it's the responsibility of the filter chain proxy to handle all the security things. Fine boss. Now what happened at fourth? Or now here you say, till now we are here, till now we are in this filter chain proxy, now URL matching, not mapping, you can say matching, and security filter execution. Fine boss. What happens here? Just see the first thing first here at the fourth step. Okay, filter chain proxy is where Spring Security's filter comes into play. Okay, so here at filter chain proxy, Spring Security filter, or you can say Spring Security's filter chain comes into play. Fine boss. Second, what is happening next now? See, the filter chain proxy. Fine boss. The filter chain proxy decides, or you can say contains multiple filter chains, each of which can be associated with a specific URL. Okay, URL patterns. Fine, URL patterns. Example, let's say array, we will do in code, we will do this technically in code. Okay, when we will configure the Spring Security by our own, then we will see that. So one filter, you can say one filter chain might apply only to, let's say I want to write some security things, and that too only for admin. It means the security things that I have written right now must be allowed only to admins, right? So there will be some URL, let's say /admin /** URLs, right now boss. This is something like VIP. You can think like if someone is VIP person, then at the airport security, for him different security department, or let's say different people, or let's say different groups of people will do the security things, right? So for that I have another different filter chain proxy, not the filter chain proxy, sorry, I have another different security filter chain, Spring Security filter chain. There is only one filter chain proxy in the entire execution. Fine. So one filter chain might apply only to admin, only to this admin, okay, this URL. Fine. One filter chain, okay, you have another filter chain. So you have another filter chain might apply to only slash public slash star star URLs, or you can say not public, you can say users, okay, admin, and say you can say user, this URL only to user, right? So based upon the path URL path pattern matching, okay, based upon the URL path matching, filter chain proxy will decide which security filter chain must be started or must be activated, because I already told you there are there may be different security filter chain, right now boss, there may be different security filter chain, right? So here suppose this is security one number, this one, okay, order 100, this security filter chain is there only for the admin. So only admin, okay, slash admin request will access this filter chain. Got it? This security filter chain one will be there only for the admin, not for the user or public URLs, right? And this similarly this can be made available for the user slash user URL. Fine. So this way you can write different configurations. It means for admin you need to write different security filter chain. You can write for user you can write configure different security filter chain. Like this you have to do, right? Now filter chain proxy determines or decides which is the required from here as well, not it here. See, now the filter chain proxy, main work is of filter chain proxy here boss. Now the filter chain proxy decides the correct, or you can say the right word, appropriate chain of filters based on the request URL and the security configuration in your application, okay, such as like what boss, like array yaar, HTTP, you write something like this, HTTP security, okay, configuration, something like this, you will write, we will see on the code, okay, we will see in the code. Fine. HTTP security, okay, HTTP dot something like this, you need to call some method, so we will see that, okay. But here filter chain proxy will decide the correct or appropriate chain of filters, that which one should be executed for, right? Once the correct filter chain is found, suppose now correct filter chain found, then the filter chain proxy decides. It means filter chain proxy is like manager boss. Filter chain proxy executes each filter in the chain in sequence, okay, one by one. Now filter chain proxy decides that, okay, I have to go with this security filter chain too. Now in this all the filter, okay, sequence wise, one by one all will be executed, okay. So one by one all will be executed and filter will do the job. So the fifth step, security filter execution, right boss? So security filter execution is done now, okay, fine sir. So the filters in the chain could include various security related security related task. These tasks can be what, boss? Such as authentication, authorization, right? Like checking if the user is authenticated or not. Okay, authenticated. Fine. C. B, you can say. Next one, handling login request. For this there is something username and password authentication filter. Fine, authentication filter. Then C. So different tags, there are different filters given there, right, boss? Then managing CSRF tokens. For managing this security task, there is one filter called CSRF filter. Fine, boss. One second. Accidentally I clicked here. Fine. Filter. Okay. CSRF filter. Then D, boss. At point D, what happens? Performing authorization checks. What, boss? So for this there is another filter called filter security interceptor. Filter security interceptor. Okay, see here, there are filter security interceptor. This is the class security via implementation. See, use authorization filter in this is deprecated now. Fine, you can see this is deprecated now. Okay, so filter security interceptor, use authorization filter in a state. See, this is the authorization filter. That's why I wrote authorization above. So the same thing here, you can say authorization filter. That's the correct name now. Okay, authorization filter. Okay, latest version. Fine, latest version. Okay, in latest version the name is authorization filter. Okay, that I was showing. Fine, boss. So these some more, and similarly, okay, and etc. So for different tasks there are different filters. Fine, boss. Okay, now here the filter chain ensures that the request passes through the necessary security checks before reaching the controller, है ना? Before reaching the controller, this must be done, na, boss? Yes or no, yaar? Before reaching the controller layer, these all security things must be done. Okay, so filter chain again ensures that things. Now 6. Okay, response to the request. Now, boss, response, how will you get the response? Right, how will you get the response? Okay, sir. So if all security filters in the chain passes, okay, in the chain pass, like user authenticated, okay, and authorized, okay, then the request is allowed to proceed to the target controller via what, boss? Dispatcher servlet, right? Via dispatcher servlet internally, right? Dispatcher servlet. Fine boss, let me write here configured internally automatically. Fine, you don't need to configure it. Fine, dispatcher servlet. Now if any, here see, understand the thing. If any security filter blocks the request, suppose user is not authenticated, okay, then in this case it will give 401, okay. User is not authenticated or authorized, okay, then it will give 401 403, okay, http response. Fine, that's the thing here. And I hope this clears all the confusion that how Spring Security works. So first of all, I just drew the diagram and explained to you, and then I'm just like I wrote all these things on this note, sir. Yes, no boss. So please comment below if you are getting all the points there. Fine boss. Okay boss. See here, one more thing can I write here, that is about delegating filter proxy, so that fine. Okay, see here why delegating filter proxy is there. So to bridge the gap between servlet containers filter mechanism and IOC container in version of control container, right? So that's the thing here, why it's needed, why there is need of delegating filter proxy, why there is need of delegating filter proxy. Fine boss, see the answer here, very simple. Servlet containers means Tomcat, ZT and etc uses their own servlet container uses their own filter chains to process HTTP requests. Here what I was explaining, okay, this is the filter chain, na boss, this is the filter chain, servlet container filter. Let me cover it with this whole black color, or let's say pink color, or let me go with some little yellowish color. This is what, this is nothing but filter chain of servlet container. Okay boss, this is nothing but filter chain of servlet container, this yellow wala part, okay. So that's thing. So servlet container uses their own filter chains to process HTTP request. That's it, that we already know, right? Now yes, before they reach the web application, before they reach the controller or all the things, okay, web application. So filters, now see here, filters in a servlet container are configured in web.xml, okay, or through annotations in Spring Boot, or through annotations in Spring Boot. Fine, boss. That's it, first of all. So filters internally. Fine. Now see here. Delegating filter proxy. Here see. However, Spring security operates within Spring IOC container, right? This is correct. Where all security beans like filter chain proxy are being managed. Yes, na boss. Yes. So delegating filter proxy works as a bridge. It registers as a filter. Registered is a correct line. It registered as a filter, you can say, in the servlet containers filter chain. Yes, boss. And it delegates the actual filtering work. Yes, actual filtering tasks to a Spring managed bean called FilterChainProxy. That's the main important point here. Already I told you how it works. I already told you there. Okay, that's why. Okay, in a Spring Boot it is automatically configured. You don't need to do anything. Okay, here filter in a servlet are configured in web.xml or through annotations in Spring Boot. Fine. And let me write one more thing here. Delegating filter proxy automatically gets configured as auto configuration in Spring Boot. Fine, boss. As part of auto configuration in Spring Boot. Main important point here, right? Now if I say filter chain proxy, let me write. I'm just again writing these two topics because these are the only main important point you need to understand in the whole architecture. Filter chain proxy. So filter chain proxy is like manager of your Spring filters. Spring security needs a flexible and customizable, you can say, way to manage multiple Spring security filters. Right, boss? Spring security filters. Now this requires an internal mechanism like filter chain proxy to decide which filters should be executed based on the current request and that 2 in correct order. That's why FilterChainProxy is there. So, right, FilterChainProxy is that component of your Spring security which actually manages the Spring security filters. Fine. That's the thing. You need just to go here and say filter chain proxy in Spring. Just open it. You see delegates filter request to a list of Spring managed filter bins. Fine. You can see this. FilterChainProxy is configured using a list of Spring security filter chain, each of which contains request matcher, some like for the URL patterns, something like this. Okay, this is given for your XML configuration, right here. So request handling, fine. That's thing. See, this is given by Spring Framework, Spring org.springframework.security.web. Fine. So I hope this video added some value to your learnings, and thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for watching this course. Please do share it and help your friends and colleagues to learn Spring security with Spring Boot in so much of details. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll meet you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.